Hi.
Hello,
Hello. Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Bill.
I am Professor Gene.
All right. We are here for part 2 of our June sessions with this one will be on men's health. We covered last Friday women's health. That podcast is up everywhere on the website, YouTube, etc. So today will be men's health. Let's do some housekeeping first. Again, send your questions or whatever things, topics you guys might want to hear us talk about. And again, please follow us on our LinkedIn page. And that's probably the best way to see what's going on. We live stream to LinkedIn primarily. And then, of course, if you missed that, it's not the right time for you guys, then you can always listen to it later on multiple platforms. Let's see, what else?
You can send those questions right on LinkedIn, like a message, or if you happen to go to our website, on Bioactive Nexus, you can send it that way too.
Exactly. And we also have, we have some new features in the broadcast software, so we're going to try this today. You can actually join the studio live here, so I'm going to throw this up on the screen. You can click on that link and join the studio and do live chat with us if you have questions as we're going through this. So, I'll throw that up again later on, Gene, as we get more people on here. But anyway, you can. It's kind of cool. You can click on the link, and that'll take you to the Riverside Platform Studio, to our studio, and then you can actually participate with us if you want. Anyway, pretty cool. All right, so now let's go to some other announcements. Do you want to talk again about the Vitamin Professor?
Sure, podcast? I'll just mention that, and in addition to the Bioactive Nexus podcast I do with Dr. Bill here, I also do the Vitamin Professor podcast in partnership with Vitamin Retailer Magazine. And in that one, I interview predominantly people from raw material companies that have science-based nutraceuticals, and we had a discussion about that. So you can access that through the Vitamin Retailer website. And that's also, on different platforms, just like this one is here. It has a YouTube channel as well. Mm-hmm. So I invite you to tune in and check that out.
And as for me, two things. One, I'm still in the search for executive level position in industry. So if anybody hears something about that, please let me know. And the second thing is I launched my website, Where Spirit Meets Science. It's williamdavidclark.com. And actually, I even have a little intro that I'll just play.
Yeah, let's see it. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, williamdavidclark.com. Come check it out. The first podcast is going to start in July. I'm excited about that. I'm actually working through the agenda right now, but that'll be like on Sunday mornings, which will be kind of easy. You don't have to stress for your work day or whatever, but we'll probably do that after the 4th of July holiday. We'll come out with that.
Makes sense.
Anyway, so stay tuned for that. And that's all the announcements I have. So maybe we'll get to our first topic here.
Let's do it.
So, like last week, we did a trivia question for women's health. And so I've got one for men's, which is, I don't know if it's really trivia, but it's kind of historical of interest, So, did you know that Rhodiola rosea, or rose root, or Arctic root, or golden root, there's a lot of common names for it, was actually used by the Vikings some time ago to enhance physical endurance and strength. So obviously it comes from that region. It's indigenous to that area.
And that's a good example of why sometimes traditional use and science meet, because the science really supports that whole endurance aspect of rhodiola.
Yeah, and if you think about the climate there, I mean, I don't know about you, Gene. I've seen the whole Viking series and Vikings Valhalla, and actually, that's my ancestors are from Denmark, so Vikings as well. I even have the Viking
Look at
tattoos
that.
here.
You do,
Yeah,
don't you?
yeah, full blown. But anyway, yeah, the plant is an adaptogenic, right? It's a
Right.
root. And again, it's interesting that I think it's what's fascinating about it is that certain plants, certain things happen to be located in certain areas where it's probably of the most use and traditional use. If you look historically at a lot of different things, you see a parallel there. So, but
Indeed, you
anyway,
do.
yeah. So, so there's traditional knowledge here, Nordic and Scandinavian folklore, various records from the different writings, that sort of thing, of the use of the root, and it being used in traditional practices. So there's some herbal texts, ancient herbal texts, and manuscripts from the region that talk about its medicinal properties, including stamina, vitality, that sort of thing. And
Yeah. I've
which
been
is
formulating with it for a couple of decades
yeah,
anyway.
yeah, me
Yeah,
too,
it's a
and
great one.
yeah, and I take it daily as well. So myself. It's an awesome botanical, and there's a lot of modern research on this too to validate that science.
Yeah.
Actually,
Well, that's of course what I personally rely upon for my structure function claims when I'm, formulating a product like this. It's you can talk about traditional use, but for those old structure function claims, it's nice to have some modern science. And luckily, there's a fair amount of it
yeah,
where
there's a fair
rhodiola is
amount.
concerned.
Yeah, I think there's some concerns about scarcity of rhodiola
There
because
is.
in terms of supply, because it is such in demand.
Well, do you know that I've seen one company, I think it's Gnosis, it's a raw material company. They're
Yeah.
actually doing
Oh yeah.
a fermented material that's a salidroside, one of the two major compounds in rhodiola, and showing it to have some benefits on
Yeah.
oxygen utilization and so forth. So yeah, I mean, so there's some creative ways of trying to deal with that.
Yeah, that's a biotech approach to that.
It is.
it's pretty interesting, but again, it doesn't give you all the components from the
It
plant
doesn't.
itself.
It doesn't, and that's
What
the downside.
yeah, and I think that's what's really important because if you're doing it just for one compound, then then that's really not a
Yeah,
supplement
the
anymore.
reductionist approach in herbal medicine isn't hasn't shown to be all
No,
that great over time. It's like uh, when St. John's wort was found out to be such an effective antidepressant, and
right,
then they were looking at trying to take out the hypericins and hyperforins. And if we just use these, can we create a drug out of it? No, they didn't work by
right,
themselves. They needed the other compounds with them to have the
absolutely.
effect.
Yeah, the chemistry is you have multiple components in there. I mean, that's true of every plant or botanical. And I'm sorry, at the end of the day, Mother Nature does it best. So every drug companies for years or decades have been trying to isolate single components and some success with that. And I think probably the thinking on that was going way back, I think the 1800s with Bayer and salicylic acid from willow bark.
Sure.
A lot of drugs started as natural products, right?
Oh
However,
yeah.
but there are going back to rhodiola. There's been numerous studies showing its adaptogenic properties, helping to reduce stress, enhance physical performance, improve cognitive function, or whatever. It definitely gives that alertness, which is kind of cool. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
stimulant like caffeine would do, but you have that kind of alertness, and so I think that's where the energy comes
Yeah.
from.
One of the things I have always liked about it is some of the research where it's been shown to be useful in helping to reduce work-related fatigue. I remember one study they did on young doctors
Yeah.
that were doing their rotations, the long hours, and it actually helped them quite a bit in maintaining
Mm-hmm.
their general energy and reducing fatigue. So pretty cool stuff.
Cool stuff. Yeah. So the active components in there, you got rosamin, salidroside, and tyrosol. These are all components that are shown to help the body resist physical, chemical, and biological stressors. So pretty cool
Indeed.
stuff. And actually, if you go back and you may not remember it, but I don't know which episode it was, but prior to battle in one of the Viking shows, these guys were all chewing on the root. Now I know it was rhodiola root. They were all chewing on the root, getting prepared for battle. So It's funny that that's actually something minor like that. Of course, no one says what it is, but I kind of, as
right.
a natural products chemist, I said, but that's supposed to be rhodiola root, man. They're chewing on the root.
Nice.
Nice. Okay, so let's move into men's health and talk about first the top health issues there.
Yeah. Well, not surprisingly, heart disease is out there kind of leading the pack.
Yep.
To no one's surprise at all. That's a common situation. And again, to no one's surprise, cancer, particularly for men, prostate, colon cancer, follows as a close second. Likewise, to no surprise, diabetes is a big issue and something that has been an issue in both of our families, Bill. And so it's near and dear to our hearts is anything that can be done to help in that situation. And then, low testosterone or low T, as it's come to be known, is something that a lot of men deal with, and that impacts various aspects of their life. People often think of it as, it's going to affect their sexual health, and while it certainly can, just energy-wise, low testosterone just like makes you a low energy, cranky old guy. And then what sometimes goes along with it, but not specific to just testosterone, is erectile dysfunction that some men will experience. And another component here is your benign prostate hyperplasia, or BPH, enlargement of the prostate, which is very, very common as men age, and will impact their quality of life in a number of different ways. That swelling of the prostate means that it reduces, if you think of the prostate as a sort of a donut gland and your urethra through which urine flows, and it starts to inflame and it squeezes it, and you have difficult and halting and frequent urination that occurs with all the wonderful symptoms that go along with it. So that's another good one.
Which affects your sleep, because then you're waking up tonight.
That's the number one. You know what's interesting? I used to work for a company that sold the number one prostate product on the market, supplement-wise. And when the marketing department did various kinds of ads, they found that the number one response was when they mentioned nighttime urination. The number one response, because that's the thing that really affects men's quality of life so much as having to get up and pee frequently during the night as a result of that.
Exactly. And I think both Gene and I are familiar with this issue because we're men in that age group.
I resemble that remark.
I resemble that remark. Yeah, there you go. But I got to tell you, since this is just a personal testimonial, since I started incorporating berberine into my supplement regimen, for different reasons, but also saw palmetto and other things like that. That's what I meant, not berberine. We'll get to that when we talk about diabetes.
Saw palmetto,
Saw palmetto and formulation it's for men's health. I don't have the middle of the night stuff happening.
Likewise, I'm not having that problem. And like you, I'm using a very good saw palmetto extract along with beta-sitosterol. And that combination seems to work very, very well.
Yeah, it does. So let's get into the different ingredients, starting with our vitamins and minerals. Again, it's the same. There's a lot of overlap here. There's a lot of benefits here for both men and women, but certain vitamins and minerals stand out for men that are important as well.
Vitamin D is appropriate. That's the first one that we mentioned. One of the interesting things, vitamin D has so many studies on it for so many different things, which makes sense when you realize vitamin D receptors are found in so many different tissues throughout the entire body. So it goes way beyond just its role in improving calcium absorption for bone health. One of the things we know is that men who are low in vitamin D, which is extraordinarily common to have vitamin D deficiency or insufficiency, and men that are low in vitamin D tend to have lower levels of testosterone. And conversely, men when you increase the vitamin D. In fact, in one study, men using a very odd amount, 3,332 international units of vitamin D
Yeah.
daily, and had low D levels, were actually able to increase their testosterone nicely and get it back into a more normal range as a
Yeah.
result. And that's particularly those who were deficient. So it makes a lot of sense from that perspective. There's information and research on vitamin D for prostate health. I mean, you could go down the line. It should be one of the number one nutrients out there used for men's health.
I agree. And I think the important call out here too, as well, is that a lot of these things, ingredients, this is why we call them supplements, all right, actually work together in conjunction with each other. And
of course,
it's a complex matrix in terms of biological activity in the body. And as we age, we, just take melatonin, for example. Melatonin decreases with age, starting in the 20s, actually, or 30s. It's like a steady decline throughout your life. Mm-hmm. So, for sure, you can see certain nutrients are age specific as well, that are important to take later in life. Vitamins, minerals are important too. So if you, the other class is, vitamin B12 is super important. And obviously the sources for that are meats. It comes from meat. For you vegetarian or vegans, sorry, I don't think you can get B12 if I'm correct. From any
you're not
going
to get very much. Well, there's some very vague sources out there. Yeah. It's really what your body is able to make, or what you can get from your meat sources.
Exactly. Vitamin C,
or your supplement.
Yeah, well, your supplement for sure. Vitamin C, vitamin E. Again, vitamin C, for antioxidant, is an antioxidant, right? Supports immune function, etc.
Sure.
Vitamin E is very important as well. Then you just mentioned that a minute ago about vitamin E and vitamin D, right?
I mentioned about vitamin D, but vitamin E is also hugely important. It's funny because back in the day, I remember so many years ago, vitamin E was thought of as a sex vitamin because of early research showing that if there was inadequate amounts of vitamin D, there was problems with fertility, and particularly in male horses. That's where it started. But vitamin E is necessary for for a healthy reproductive system in men as well as in women. Now, of course, the next one, you want to take that, or do you want me to?
No, you good.
Okay, vitamin K. So vitamin K is vitally important. And you have vitamin K1 and you have vitamin K2. And vitamin K2 is likewise divided into two types, MK4 and MK7.
Yeah, you just wrote an article about this, I think.
I did. Yeah, I did, in fact. So the thing about vitamin K2 that's particularly valuable where we're talking about men's health is particularly in the area of cardiovascular disease. As our arteries start to calcify, we think about getting cholesterol in our arteries. Cholesterol wouldn't be a problem if it didn't stick. It sticks because you get calcification. And if you can reduce the calcium deposit in the artery if you keep the calcium in the bone and it doesn't go out to the artery. Vitamin K2, as MK7, actually helps to maintain the calcium in the bone, helps to keep it out of the artery. And there's actually new data showing that vitamin K1 itself, which was thought previously to just be something for your body's ability to have a blood clot, actually has a function in reducing arterial calcification as well. So vitamin K1 and vitamin K2 as MK7 can be very beneficial for that purpose. And of course, it's also good for bone health, but less of an issue for men than it is for women.
Yep. And then I guess the last vitamin to round it up would be vitamin A. Again, essential for vision, immune function, those sorts of things. So bottom line, take a really good multivitamin, mineral supplement. Right. And let's talk about zinc, because that's important. That's important.
Yes, it is.
Let's get into the minerals here. But that's definitely important for testosterone production.
It is important for testosterone production. And one of the things that a lot of men don't realize is this. If you say, why is iron more important for women than men, then the answer that somebody might give is, well, when a woman has her menstrual cycle and loses a certain amount of blood, she loses iron. And that's true. And that's why women have a greater tendency to be more anemic than men. But guess what? When a man ejaculates, the semen contains zinc. And with every ejaculation, he loses zinc. So a sexually active man has a greater likelihood of having a zinc deficiency because of that reason. So he needs zinc like women need iron. And if you don't have an adequate amount of zinc, you're going to have problems in testosterone production. You're going to have problems in the health of your prostate. You need it for both of those things. So it's a vital, arguably one of the single most important minerals for men's health is zinc.
Yeah, and it's super important. It goes hand in hand for supporting immune function as well.
That's right.
Really important to understand. Very important mineral to have part of your diet, especially for men as well.
Exactly.
So magnesium. Magnesium's a good one. I mean, I take 400 milligrams every day.
As do I.
It's very much needed for multiple things in your body. So definitely for mood, sleep, cardiovascular health, muscle function, bone health.
All of that.
All of that is good.
And a large proportion of Americans in general do not get sufficient magnesium. So definitely a good one to supplement with.
Yeah. And this, the sources, we didn't mention this in some of the others, but, nuts and seeds, leafy greens and whole grains where you get, magnesium. But again, like you said, most people don't get the required amount that they should have. So supplementation is a good idea.
And now calcium, which we often think of hand in hand with magnesium, is obviously very important for bone health, for muscle function, for nerve signaling. And one of the trends that I've seen, which is unfortunate, is because calcium is something that is implicated in arterial calcification, there's just thought, well, you better not take any calcium. But that's not really accurate. What you want is you still need the calcium. You still need it for your bones and all these other functions. It's just that you want to make sure that the calcium goes to where it's supposed to go and that it doesn't go where it's not supposed to go. So you want to make sure the calcium goes to the bones. And the only thing you need to really do is make sure to use adequate vitamin K2 as MK7 to help make sure your calcium stays in the bone. You still need the calcium. And so don't be afraid to get some calcium in your diet, get some calcium in your supplements. Just make sure to have your vitamin K2, MK7 with it.
Yeah. And just kind of rounded up here, iron, selenium, potassium. Iron we've kind of already talked about, but selenium is definitely another important one for men. Very much involved in immune function, thyroid health. It's funny that one of the sources is Brazil nuts. So how many people pick out the Brazil nuts in their mixed nuts? I'm probably one of those.
I love my Brazil nuts.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the Brazil nuts. I mean, they're okay, but
I pick them out so I can eat them because I love them.
Well, you're a rare breed, Gene.
I know. I actually bought a bag of Brazil nuts.
Oh, okay. I don't know anybody that does that. So, okay, that is really strange.
There you go.
There you go.
Potato.
Yeah, potassium. Again, muscle contractions, nerve signals.
You need it for all of those. One of the electrolytes. You sweat it out.
One of the electrolytes. Yep, you need more. Eat lots of bananas if you're doing a lot of workout. Okay, so that brings us to the botanicals.
Yes, some of the fun stuff.
And before we, and again, so let me just say again, if you want to ask a live question here, again, you can click on the link in this live transmission, and you can join the chat. You join the studio and ask a question live. So check it out. All right. So botanicals. Well, what's the number one that comes to mind?
Palmetto. Oh, sure. And with good reason. we think of saw palmetto for its benefit for prostate health, as well we should. There are so many human clinical studies on saw palmetto, not just there's open label studies, there's randomized control trials, there's drug comparison trials comparing it to Proscar. There's so many studies that have been done on saw palmetto demonstrated effectiveness for BPH, helping to reduce symptoms of BPH, and including the urinary symptoms. But what's interesting that a lot of people don't know is, so one of saw palmetto's mechanisms of action, it has more than one, is that it reduces the conversion of testosterone to DHT, or dihydrotestosterone, which is implicated in prostate enlargement. But because of that reason, what's very interesting is that saw palmetto itself actually can have benefits for testosterone health. Because if you're not converting your testosterone into DHT, you're maintaining higher levels of testosterone.
Yeah.
And there's actually been a couple of studies in which testosterone has been combined with astaxanthin, and the combination of the two helped to reduce conversion to DHT and reduce conversion of testosterone to estradiol, the estrogen that you don't, if you're a man, you don't want to keep converting it to these other things. You want to keep your testosterone. So it has a couple of interesting applications. This particular one,
and I'm sure it's
also
it's correlated with the BPH, of course, because testosterone decreases with age with men. So
it does, and it's because a lot of it keeps getting converted to DHT, which is unfortunate. But it's also one of the single most adulterated materials out there, because the active components in the testosterone are its fatty acids. So there's a lot of fake materials out there where the testosterone, where the saw palmetto, it's spiked with fatty acids. So if you do an analysis, it's like, oh, well, okay, it's got fatty acids, it must be good. A lot of times it's not the real deal. If you want to learn more about that, I recommend you go to the American Botanical Council's website and look that up. They got some good data. But if you're looking for one, if your saw palmetto product is super cheap, super inexpensive, it's probably not real, because the real stuff does cost a little more.
Yeah. And just a little history here. I mean, saw palmetto is one of the top 10 herbals. It's been around for at least 25 years or more. I mean, it's been real popular. It was in the top 10 back in 1997. It was one of the top 10 herbals. I know this only because we developed, I was director of R&D for a company that developed Centrum Herbals that launched in 98. And one of the products was saw palmetto soft gel. And interestingly, saw palmetto, I live in Florida, and saw palmetto bushes are all over the place. I've seen those since I was a kid.
It's the number one source of saw palmetto in the world is Floridian saw palmetto.
Yep, Floridian. And no surprise then that RP Shear, which is Catalent today, was RP Shear. I remember visiting their manufacturing facility. They were the pioneers with soft gel technology, if you remember. And they produced our saw palmetto product for us. They harvested. They got it right from the farms right there in Florida. They're located in St. Petersburg, Florida. That facility's still there, by the way. Anyway, so a little history.
I used to have a saw palmetto tree in my front yard, and when I lived in Florida.
They also like to be homes for rattlesnakes. Just so you know, don't be walking through the low saw palmetto bushes. You can find some rattlesnakes there when you do that. Not a good idea. Ashwagandha. I can say a lot about ashwagandha. It's the number one botanical in Ayurvedic medicine. It's hugely popular now, obviously, especially with KSM 66 out there. Everybody knows them. But there's some other ones out there on the market as well. Tons of research on ashwagandha itself. Another adaptogenic herb. Actually, it's complementary to rhodiola, so I take both every day. But reduces stress, improves energy levels, muscle strength recovery, and also is very important for sexual functioning and testosterone. There's been some clinical research in that as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of very good studies on it for testosterone production.
Yep. Ginseng. Take it away, man.
Ginseng is, also has a reputation being beneficial for men's sexual health. And it's had a few thousand years of traditional use. And in fact, in some Asian countries, basically you hit 40, you're supposed to start taking ginseng. It is a great adaptogen, and there are some really good studies on it for endurance, energy, for cognition. Even studies on it showing as little as an hour after taking it, you have measurable improvements in cognitive function. But again, it is helpful for sexual health. It is helpful for physical performance, and it's one of the great, maybe the I was going to say the granddaddy of all adaptogens, although ashwagandha could be argued to be the granddaddy.
Yeah,
so either way, they're both fantastic.
Ashwagandha's been around for thousands of years as well. In fact, I happen to know because I visited the manufacturing facilities for KSM in Hyderabad, India, and they make two versions of the ingredient. You may not be familiar. One's a vegan version, which is with water extraction.
Right, and the other one's the milk extraction.
With milk extraction, exactly, which is the traditional way that it was produced.
Right, and most of what people don't realize is that most of the studies done on KSM 66 is done on the milk extract version of it. So good to know. So speaking of adaptogens, another one, Maca, has been around for a very, very long time and has an extensive traditional history of use for fertility, for sexual function, energy, for stamina. It's been used in both men and women, and it's one of those. So if you're looking at something like ashwagandha, if you're using a good extract, it may be, depending on what it is, maybe 600 milligrams of the extract. Ginseng, you could use 200 milligrams of the extract, maybe slightly more. Rhodiola, you could use 170 or 340 milligrams, et cetera. But Maca, you look at it and it's like, oh my gosh, you got to use high doses. You got to use 3 grams, what have you, of the powder.
Large
but
doses. The
truth of the matter is, you actually can use an extract as long as you have a standardization for its at least 0.6% macamides and macaines. You can bring that down to a much lower level and have it be a little bit more manageable. But it's a fantastic herb.
Yeah, if you have it as an extract in a, say, capsule format or a supplement, something like that, it's fine. But you also see it in bags, powders, where you put grams of this is just the whole.
Yeah, and if you do, that is the traditional way it's used. Yeah.
So I put that every now and then in my protein shakes. After workout, I throw some maca powder.
How does that taste? Is that kind of bitter?
Don't really taste it, honestly, because I put other things in that are good. But it doesn't really. I don't taste it. Yeah, right. No. But you know what? A lot of botanicals or whatever, in huge amounts have bitter components, right? Yeah, it's all the.
Well, the roots often have a bitter component to them, an alkaloid.
Speaking of roots, we forgot to mention this about ginseng. There's a ton of different extracts out there, which is a combination of the root body and root hairs, and the amount of ginsenoside. There's been a ton of research on that. So it's almost. There's been so much research in that it's probably take you a while to go through and figure out what's the best extract for whatever product you're developing there. So another really big one we know, Gene, is Tribulus terrestris.
Terrestris, indeed.
You'll see it in every men's product.
Do you remember when it first hit the market? It was a big thing. And I remember there was a bodybuilding magazine that was talking about the Bulgarian research on it, and everybody got excited. Oh my goodness. Tribulus is going to be the magical testosterone enhancer, and all these products were coming out with it. And yet everybody kept saying, well, where is the copy of that Bulgarian study? And it turns out there never was a Bulgarian study.
That's a lot of hype.
Where Tribulus is effective, but not as a testosterone enhancer. It's effective for libido, for sexual health, but its mechanism of action just has nothing to do with testosterone. In fact, there have been studies where they specifically looked at that and found it didn't move the dial at all. Nothing, no testosterone increase. But great for sexual health and libido.
Yeah. but there's not been a lot of research on it either. That's the other thing. So it's just like
It's
one of
not
those.
it's not a hugely it's
Yeah,
not like some of the others. But
it's
it is.
you
It
know
does have,
it's kind of
have
like
some
that.
data.
It's kind of like horny goat weed. Just the name itself.
Horny goatweed has limited research. It does have some. I only know that because I worked for a company that came out with one of the very first ones, and so I had to dig and find all the data on it. But yes,
Yeah. Okay. And then it seems like our botanical list is full of adaptogens here for men's health. So that must be that. The next one is rhodiola. We already talked about rhodiola.
Talked about that.
That's
Next,
huge.
So let's jump into fenugreek. What's interesting about fenugreek, when you use the fenugreek seed extract, it has been used primarily in for men for really boosting testosterone levels. But while it does have some boosting of total testosterone, its big claim to fame has been in the reduction of sex hormone binding globulin. So you have this testosterone, but a lot of it is bound up. When you unbind it, now you have your free testosterone, and it was shown to help unbind it, so it makes that a little bit more available, and you can get higher levels of your free T with that. And there's some increase in total as well. And so it's been an effective means of increasing that testosterone, the free T in particular, and not surprisingly, helping with libido because of that. So, yeah, it's a good product for that particular purpose.
Cool. So let me just say a couple words about Yohimbe. That's another one that you'll see in men's products out there. So I have kind of a little short list on recent research on that. So let me pull that up here in front of me here. Nothing super recent, actually.
No, and most of what's come about it is really has to do with the yohimbine hydrochloride, and yohimbe root certainly does contain yohimbine.
Yeah.
And yohimbe bark, rather.
Right. There was a 1994 study that, literally, and the last one that I could find was 2013. So there's not a ton of research on this. And one of those was just about how to extract, yohimbine hydrochloride, like you were just talking about, from the bark. It comes from the bark. But there was some, the study was done in 94. I don't know, Gene, if any recent studies on yohimbe.
I don't think there's much in the way of recent studies. What I can tell you is that, there is a medication, a yohimbine hydrochloride medication that can be used in helping with erectile dysfunction. And sometimes you'll find supplements that will have yohimbine hydrochloride in there, but they're really not supposed to. They're supposed to use yohimbe bark that's standardized for its yohimbine content. But it also, one has to be cognizant of the use of it. It can impact blood pressure to some extent, so you have to know what you're doing and how much you're using and how frequently you're using it. So it's not something I would say is an everyday kind of supplement.
No, it's not, and it's commonly positioned as treating erectile dysfunction or enhancing sexual performance, but there's not really any research on that. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, some years ago, it's happened more than once where a men's product was spiked with Viagra, Cialis, or something.
That's happened quite a bit. Actually,
a bit.
You're right.
And really, that's what's delivering the benefit there. So you have.
Again, there is data on yohimbine hydrochloride, which, make no mistake, is not the same thing as yohimbe bark.
No.
Okay,
it's not.
But there's research on yohimbine hydrochloride for that purpose. But
again, but not on the extracts. Nobody's really taken the time to do the research in that, and maybe it's
not in any meaningful way.
Not in a meaningful way, and it's mainly been positioned as traditional use. We could probably go through a whole list of types of botanicals. Maybe we do a show on that, of things that are supposedly in traditional use for certain conditions, but really don't have any science behind them. So, we could do a whole show on that one.
So next, stinging nettles. And we should be clear that this is the stinging nettle root. Stinging nettle leaf is an herbal medicine in itself, but for a different purpose. Stinging nettle leaf, if prepared in a freeze-dried way, actually has some application for allergies. But stinging nettle root is one of those products that has had some research on it for purposes of prostate health, BPH, helping to reduce the symptoms of BPH. And to a point that you made in our exchanges is that it has often been used in combination with saw palmetto. And a lot of these prostate herbs actually do tend to work better in combination. They often have slightly different mechanisms of action or different kinds of compounds that affect things. So it is one of the things that can be used in combination with saw palmetto and be effective for reducing BPH symptoms.
In fact, that's the product I take is a combination of saw palmetto and stinging nettle and beta testosterone and also pumpkin seed, I believe.
Pumpkin seed, that's a classic one, and the fatty acids in there seem to have similar effects. So yeah.
It goes back to those classic compounds. Fatty acids are really important there for men's health.
Yeah. So turmeric is the next one. Now,
That's like huge now. That's probably behind ashwagandha. That's probably the next biggest one out of Ayurvedic medicine, right?
Oh yeah, it's huge. And there's so many materials of this out on the market. So turmeric itself contains a group of compounds that collectively we refer to as curcuminoids. Sometimes they say it's curcumin. That's actually just one of them, but there's several.
Right.
But let's just call it curcumin for the sake of argument. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, those curcuminoids have some of them very, very strong anti-inflammatory activity, antioxidant activity, does a number of things. They even help promote the production of glutathione, a very important antioxidant in our body. But here's the deal. Curcumin itself is poorly absorbed in the body.
Very poorly absorbed.
And so unless you're taking in a lot of it, like you're from a traditional culture that eats a lot of curries and that sort of thing, you're probably not going to get a tremendous amount by just taking a plain turmeric material.
Yeah.
You need to use one that has a delivery system associated with it. And that delivery system, there's so many. There's just so many.
Well, there's
I've
other
written
ingredients
extensively on this.
Yeah, there's other ingredients. There's technologies out there. I know
many.
And then there's also the other thing that's important too. There's different types of extracts out there. There's some going all the way from this covering the whole spectrum from the root extract, just the root itself, up to a 95% curcumin standardized extract.
Right. Now,
very different.
Exactly. So I just, in fact, conducted a seminar at a sports nutrition symposium. Was it last week or the week before, or something like that? And
a couple of weeks ago,
they wanted me to do it on curcumin. So I had so I laid out a lot of data on this, and there's a number of very good ones. And you should also know there's some really crappy ones too.
Yeah.
And this is where the industry, some companies in industry try to fool people. They'll take and they'll say, I got an organic turmeric. That's great. But organic turmeric, whether it's organic or conventional, still isn't well absorbed. When they say, oh, but I got an extract here. Okay. All right. That's nice. Still doesn't mean it's well absorbed. What have you done to improve its absorption? And so, buyer beware. Look very carefully. There's materials out there, things like Mariva or curcumin or Term Extra or so many good ones that have good research on them, showing them to be very well absorbed, highly bioavailable, and just as many really crappy ones that aren't well absorbed. So make sure you get a good one.
When you have a popular botanical or ingredient like this in our industry, there's always going to be different grades of different extracts out there. What I would say from the commodity version to the one that's really got research behind it, right? So,
definitely one part. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just to finish that point. I think I remember we did some research on this. There's probably 6 different types of extracts out there of turmeric, right from the root. So, and,
Yeah.
and of course, the chemistry is going to be totally different between it. So, like if you're saying you have, curcuma longa or turmeric in your ingredient in your product, the consumer or product developer who's developing should ask, okay, well, which one are we using? What research is around that? Because it's not just, it's kind of a unique sort of botanical in that sense, having multiple types of extracts out there.
Indeed. And just to mention what it's good for, we mentioned anti-inflammatory, antioxidant,
Right.
but more specifically, there's a body of research on it for joint health, things like arthritis, but also things like delayed onset muscle soreness. So you're exercising, you're sore, you're achy. That can actually help with that. And then there's research on different areas. A lot of people don't know there's actually some research on it in prostate health, helping with prostate inflammation.
No,
So
I didn't know that.
I mean, there's broad range, even cognitive stuff. It's all over the board, and it makes sense. So that's turmeric, folks.
Turmerics, yep. Another big one. So ginger. This is probably another one in terms of helps improve. You typically think of it for digestive, reduce nausea, that sort of thing. But it does have some anti-inflammatory properties there. So again, important for joint health. I've seen combination products with curcumin and ginger, for example. That's kind of a popular combo.
It is there. Popular. Yeah. And unfortunately, they put like 50 milligrams ginger powder in there.
Yeah.
Instead of using a real
the other thing we should say about curcumin is or turmeric as well is that there was a study done a few years ago with bioperine, which was a standard 95% standardized piperine extract that showed a higher, some blood work that showed a higher in blood levels of the curcumin in the bloodstream for a short period of time. So it did increase absorption there, but it's short-lived. And then I've also seen products out there that say they have black pepper. Well, that's not the same because it's, the bioperine is branded standardized extract, 95% piperine. So very different.
You got to have sufficient amounts of that.
You can't just put pepper in there with turmeric and say you've got better absorption.
And I gotta just tell you, while there are a number of bioperine, piperine studies combining that together with different botanicals, different nutraceuticals, showing improved bioavailability. And I don't dispute that at all. I think that that's very real. But it's not my favorite mechanism for improving bioavailability. It's really, to my understanding of it, it's really kind of a localized irritation in the gut, which increases permeability locally. And to me, I'm not sure if that's a good thing to do every day on an ongoing basis.
Well, I know if I eat too many chilies or, my wife's Mexican, we eat Mexican cuisine, I got heartburn, man. So it doesn't work for me. Oh, but maybe I should take some turmeric with that.
There you go. That's funny. So next on our list.
Yes. We already mentioned it. Horny goatweed. We kind of jumped the gun on that one. So
horny goatweed is... So the company I used to work for many years ago came out with horny goatweed material. And we actually did a dinky little study with a doctor in New York City. Very small, had to do with his open label trial, just some of his patients. And, it seemed to have some benefit for sexual health, erectile dysfunction. But it wasn't a controlled trial. And so I wasn't that impressed with the research, but it's there. There's some. But, I think what sold it was the name. I think the name, horny goatweed, which had nothing to do with being horny. It had to do with the goat who ate this material and had horns.
Yes, it had horns. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't know that, but they think the average consumer might think that means that if they see it in a men's product, oh, okay, good.
Makes you horny. There you go.
Yeah, pero no, as we say in Mexico. You want to take ginkgo, and then I'll jump into
ginkgo biloba. I will say that this is the granddaddy of all cognitive herbs. It's been around a very long time, and a good ginkgo biloba extract has a lot of different studies on it. And so it's mostly known for its cognitive benefits. particularly for people who are trending towards dementia, but even people who are not. There's been some studies on it. There's even been studies on it for younger people in school, although they used higher doses for that. And so that's all well and good. But part of why it works has to do with its impact on circulation, which
Right.
can have benefits for cardiovascular health. So it has that benefit. And even though it's an old granddaddy herb,
Yeah.
I still take it. I still like it. I think it's
Yeah.
a good product.
Actually, I don't see too many products on the market that advertising ginkgo products. It was
You know,
really
it's not sexy anymore. People, there's
It's
so many
not.
other things that, it's not sexy, but it works. So
Well, and
I
that was
still like
one. It was one of the it's decades old or longer. Well, this is another ancient traditional medicine, right? So, but I was in Dina had their extract back 25 years ago or so.
it did.
That which was one of the Centrum herbals we launched with ginkgo, but it was their own proprietary extract. So actually, to be honest with you, I don't know what the latest extracts are for ginkgo out there in the market. I think Indina still
Yeah,
sells it,
the
but
standard 24% flavon
yeah,
glycosides, et cetera, et
yeah,
cetera.
yeah. It was like
So
a 2040 something. I don't remember.
yes,
Um,
I think it was 24 of that, and I think it was, I want to say 6%.
24/6. That's what we call it. 24/6.
Ginkgolides, yeah.
It was a 24/6 extraction ratio. Yeah.
Yeah.
Between the two classes of compounds. Yeah, that's right. Okay, let's finish up with our other ingredients. Okay, so things that don't fall into the other category. So, of course, number one, and then I've already talked about this, is biotics. Okay, so huge, and again, microbiome research is really leading right now in our industry. There's tons and tons of research coming out almost every day. It's I noticed since supply side a year and a half ago in the industry newsletter, now that people are referring to it as biotics. Before they just said probiotic. So now people are getting used to using the term biotics, which means prebiotics, probiotics, post,
sin.
Yeah, there you go.
And you know, I mean, you've done a lot of research on this. I've done a lot of writing on it, but you did a lot of research on this. And I will just say what's one of the interesting areas. I mean, it seems like every other day somebody's coming up with a new application for these things. The typical ones is, gut health and immune health and that kind of thing. But many other areas, like, for instance, cholesterol, cardiovascular health.
Yeah. Or eye health. There's some clinical research in that.
Yeah. It's quite interesting.
For certain strains.
And so, right, exactly. I saw one of those when I was at VitaFoods and one of the booths near ours had it for eye health. But we're talking about men, and we're talking about cardiovascular health. There's some strains of probiotics that can be particularly beneficial for them. So
I think we're going to see, Gene. I think you'd agree that in the next few years, we're going to see this really take hold in terms of a major category within the supplement product business. So if you're a product formulator or a product brand that's doing supplements today, if you're not playing in this space, you're going to miss the wave. You're
going to miss the boat. Yeah.
You're definitely going to miss the wave in that. So, and there's several really good ingredient suppliers out there that have some really specialized. What's interesting to me, all the research that I've done on this and found out, is that you'll find general classes of biotics like lactobacillus or bifidobacteria, right? But then they'll have different species, and then you have the strain specifications. And the research is done on specific strains, which is proprietary usually to the company that's producing it. So it's not like you can take the same Lactobacillus brevis, without a strain and get the same results. This is important here, and get the same results for a strain that shows it for a certain indicated or certain indication or something, right? So it's really actually quite complex to navigate. And I did this last year. I went through, and the year before, I went through an exercise of mapping out all the available research and strains out there. Tons of stuff out there. Some good research, some mediocre. But I think what I find fascinating is you've got the traditional things, like you said, digestive health is what people think of with biotics, and particularly probiotics. But then you also have an IBS. That's a big issue with that's a condition. It's a irritable bowel syndrome is a condition there with digestive health. But immune, I think consumers understand more about immune now with Biotics. But now in the whole mental wellness area, mood, sleep, stress, cognitive function, there are strains with research showing benefits in these areas. So I think
psychobiotics.
Psychobiotics is the term. That's right. I used that before, didn't I? So psychobiotics is kind of interesting. I find it fascinating. And if you think about, we talked about this in a previous episode. You can go back and check that out. But that whole gut-brain axis, the vagus nerve, and all that kind of stuff. So I think you have, if a strain was studied for stress, we probably would, if we did a study for cognitive function or mood or something like that, you probably would find a benefit as well. So there's a lot of overlap here. It's kind of
there is.
Yeah, there is. Anyway.
So jumping into the next one, let's talk about omega-3 fatty acids, which since I remember back in the 80s when the fish oils were hitting the market and it was a big deal, and we're talking about how, the native Inuit people were eating and consuming, whale blubber, and they were consuming all kinds of saturated fats, and yet they didn't have the same rate of cardiovascular disease, and it was this magical stuff called omega-3 fatty acids. And fast forward, since then, there's been just a tremendous amount of literature on so many studies showing the benefits of omega-3 fatty acids for cardiovascular health. There's even been some where they try to say, it doesn't.
Brain health too. Yeah. Brain.
Absolutely. For a number of areas. I mean, it's a great anti-inflammatory. There's so much on omega-3 fatty acids. But to me, if you're looking for the benefits for cardiovascular health, that you want to focus more towards the EPA as opposed to the DHA. Not that you don't need any DHA, it's just that most of the data on the health for your cardiovascular system has to do with the EPA omega-3 as opposed to the DHA, and whereas the DHA is more for brain health. And so those are things, that's what I try to do. And I would emphasize to people that you want to get a very high quality omega-3 fatty acid. You want to make sure you're not taking one that is oxidized. How do you know if it's oxidized? You know what? You pop it, you swallow it, and you get fishy burps. And you're thinking, oh, that's fine because it's from fish. No. If it's fresh and it's not oxidized, you don't get the fishy burps. So if you're getting fishy burps, go find a good one that is a fresh, non-oxidized material. There's also krill, and there's also algae sources. Doesn't have to necessarily be fish. But people are simply not getting sufficient amounts of omega-3s in their diet. And there was a time in the earlier part of the last century where we had about a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 intake. Omega-6 is what you probably get more of in your vegetable oils, vegetable sources. But the now it's more of like a 16-to-1 of omega-6s, which are more inflammatory, whereas the omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. So we definitely need to increase our intake of the omega-3s. Great for inflammation, great for cardiovascular health. So,
and Gene's right. You got to look for the quality ones there, because there's a lot of what I would call commodity omega-3 type products out there that are not really doing anything for you. So our last. Yeah, go ahead. Did you have something on omega-3? Sorry.
No. Moving on to the next one.
Okay. Yeah, the amino acids, arginine and citrulline. We talked about this last week, and increases blood flow. So, and of course, these are targeted in men's sexual health products as well as women now too.
Very, very much so. I think it bears repeating what I said last week, is that if you're using arginine and ornithine or citrulline, my personal favorite is citrulline, simply because research shows that if you supplement with arginine on a daily basis, your body makes less arginine. Whereas if you supplement with citrulline, your body converts the citrulline to arginine. You'll actually get higher arginine levels from taking citrulline than you will from taking arginine, and your body will continue to make it. And like arginine, you'll get that increase in nitric oxide, which is what you're striving for. that's the thing that helps with sexual response and erectile function.
Yep. Okay, folks, that's about out of time for us. That was a crash course in ingredients for men's health. And we didn't cover them all, by the way. I just thought of another one while we're talking here. But anyway, certainly reach out to us if you got questions on something like that, and we'll be happy to answer those. And don't know what we're going to do for July, but I think we'll be back because since the 4th of July holiday is, I think that falls on doesn't that fall on a Friday?
Let's see.
Yeah, it falls on a Thursday, but it's during that.
But then everybody's got the next day off, and
everybody's taking off that weekend. So we're gonna, we're first and third Wednesday. So I think we're going to shift this to July 12th and 26th for July for our next podcast. I don't know what topics we're going to do, but that's what we'll do. And any last comments, Gene? I'll take us out of here.
No, I think that's it. Just if you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. All right.